So welcome everybody to today's new Waterways webinar. And today we're very excited to hear about all of the amazing things that are going on at the City of Mandurah. So for those of you who are not aware, the City of Mandurah was awarded the Platinum Waterwise Council of the Water Corporation and Waterwise Council's program. This is the second time in 7 years that they've been awarded platinum. So it's pretty exciting, and so huge congratulations to Mandurah. They've been doing an amazing thing. So we have three presenters today to talk about the raft of projects and programs that they are implementing, which, you know, they needed to do a really awesome job to get platinum. So we're going to showcase those projects today. So first of all, I'd also like to acknowledge that I am on Wajak Noongar Boodja and pay my deepest respects to all Aboriginal people and their continuing love for country, for people, for culture, for knowledge about the environment and the way that they have looked after it forever. And I acknowledge that our speakers are coming from the Bindjarra lands and would like to pay my respects to the Bindjarra people as well, and all of the Aboriginal lands that you're all on, wherever you might be. So also feel free to pop in the chat the lands that you're on and say hi to everybody. So the three speakers that we have today, very excited. The first one is Dale Robinson from the City of Mandurah. And Dale is the Senior Water Resources Officer. He has a degree in Environmental Management from Murdoch Uni, and he has been working for Mandurah for a while. His experience has been through previous work with the private sector for 7 years and 11 years with state government. As part of his role, he's project managed and delivered the managed aquifer recharge schemes, which are so exciting. So we'll hear about those, as well as the recycling schemes. So hello, thank you, Becky, for putting that in the chat. That's awesome. So I'll introduce all speakers today, if that's cool, and then they'll just follow on from each other. So I'd like to welcome Dave Janiec. He's the Coordinator of Business Systems, and also their full bios are on the website as well. So please have a read of those because they're fantastic. So Dave is a Coordinator of Business Systems, as I said. This is so cool. So he loves sensors and actionable data, which is just very exciting. So 2 decades of experience in IT, and he loves information systems, embedded programming and data sciences, and he has a unique approach to data and management and presentation. And he's going to share that practical experience with us today. So this is really cool. And then we will hear from Bonnie Beal Richardson, who is the Coordinator of Environmental Engagement. And she has worked in the environmental field for the past 15 years and has had the opportunity to work on a diverse array of incredible projects. Bonnie is passionate about inspiring people to harness their unique skills and interests to create positive change in their world. In 2018, she was a finalist at the West Australian Young Achiever Awards, and in 2021 was named the Australian Association for Environmental Education's Environmental Educator of the Year, which is really cool. So please welcome these three speakers. And as I said, the Q&A is up there. Please pop any questions that you think about as the presentation's going, and we'll ask all those three speakers the questions right at the end of all three presentations, if that's cool. All right, I'm going to hand over to Dale and welcome everybody from Mandurah and everybody. So thanks, Dale.
Oh, thanks very much, Shelley. And it's, great to be presenting. Very pleased to have received the Platinum Award, and it's been fantastic, the amount of work the city's been completing, and for DWER and the Water Corporation to acknowledge what we've been undertaking. So I'll be talking today about aquifer recharge in our catchment. It's really extensive and it's been happening for many years, which is one really important thing to acknowledge, that recharge doesn't just happen overnight. You need many years of recharge for it to be significant and usable. And the one benefit is the Kangaroo Paw Park that we've upgraded, and that's due to aquifer recharge and what the community deserve, and how we can upgrade our public open spaces for our community. Love Our Lakes workshops, just how we're educating our community on 20 of our urban lakes. I'll be discussing our urban lakes and the Waterwise Verge program that we run each year. And then I'll be passing over to Dave Janiec for the water consumption visibility, and Bonnie Beal for the environment strategy. So just to emphasise managed aquifer recharge in the Mandurah catchment. So yeah, I really want to emphasise that it's infiltration. So you can see the different techniques for managed aquifer recharge, and it's infiltration via the Water Corporation. It's owned and operated by the Water Corporation. It's treated wastewater, secondary treated, which enters the basins within the Mandurah catchment, and this water is recharging our groundwater. And the city completed hydrogeological studies to determine just how much water is within our catchment and to essentially be relicensed by DWER. So yeah, it's very important that we completed hydrogeological studies associated with the recharge created by the Water Corporation. So yeah, this is not a new thing for the city. It's been happening for over 20 years. So we had our first pilot plant for Horsehead that conducted by CSIRO, and which created 1.85 hectares of public open space, 40,000 kilolitres. So it was acknowledged that the Horsehead treatment plant is recharging the groundwater back in 1999, and we went through all the conditions to receive Department of Health approval and DWER approval. And then we completed another preliminary hydrogeological study in 2008, receiving 88,250 kilolitres for the Meadow Springs sporting oval, and that's associated with a treatment plant in our north, the Gordon Road treatment plant. So that's the biggest treatment plant in Mandurah. And in 2014, we looked at a smaller treatment plant down in Dawesville, Cattedup, and we received 120,000 kilolitre licence, and that is now and continues to support a major sporting oval down in Dawesville. So without recognising this aquifer recharge, there was no water in this region, and by doing the hydrogeological study, we were able to determine that with a sustainable water source and a 3.06, well, two ovals being supported down in Cattedup. And then Horsehead, we expanded on the pilot plant in 2017 to 2020. So where we extended the main line down to another two significant sporting ovals. I mentioned that sporting membership in Mandurah is through the roof. It's very popular. So we certainly need the water security, and managed aquifer recharge is supporting these major sporting ovals and public open space. And then the most recent, the present, the Gordon Road Resource Recovery Plant, again, Water Corporation's plant, where I'll mention that, yeah, there's 4 gigalitres. So I normally bring up the graphic of Optus stadiums. So every year there's 4 Optus stadiums infiltrating into our catchment, and doing the hydrogeological study, we determined that 300,000 kilolitres was sustainable, or about 26 hectares could be abstracted to support public open space. So I'll emphasise that I'm now just concentrating on the north part of Mandurah. So that's the outlined red area. So that's predominantly our major population is in North Mandurah, and that's why there is 4 gigalitres of wastewater, which is treated going back into our catchment, going back into the aquifer, and so that's significantly recharging North Mandurah. So yeah, that's our catchment, and these are the 3 treatment plants. So the Gordon Road is in the north, Horsehead Central, so that's about 1.5 Optus stadiums per year going into the ground, and then about 1 Optus stadium going into the ground for Cattedup. So if you can picture that, significant recharge. And so through the hydrogeological study that I keep mentioning, we drilled a number of monitoring bores this is in the north, associated with the Gordon Road treatment plant. Again, that 4 gigalitres going into the ground. And I'll emphasise that the green area is the fresh water that's within the North Mandurah catchment. This is east-west, so this recharge is going towards the ocean and towards the Serpentine River, so to the estuary. So this is where we found significant water recharge, significant mounding on our groundwater. Below the treatment plant is about 1.2 metres of water table increase. So the water table is increasing. And then to the west, 2.3 kilometres, we get to about 0.2, 0.1 metres, 10 centimetres of recharge on top of the groundwater. So the recharge is extensive. It mixes with the current native groundwater, and this recharge is what makes it sustainable. And as you can see, we've found 26 metres of fresh water below the treatment plants. And then as it travels west, it's discovered that it's 30 metres. So that's the east-west. And then the north-south, the freshwater lens is not as thick. It's still 26 metres below the treatment plant, but it does become more thin. But 10 metres of fresh water is still significant, and it's still sustainable, and it still is being recharged by the Gordon Road treatment plant. So that's very important. Yeah, let me just mention this has been over 40 years of recharge. So that's how long it takes to have recharge within your catchment and meaningful. The other treatment plants are not as old, and they're growing, and the recharge is becoming more significant. But you can see in this schematic that there's Kangaroo Paw Park. So that's 10 metres of fresh water. When we drilled to abstract, it certainly was 10 metres of fresh water. And so that is 1.8 kilometres from the recharge. So it is a significant distance, this recharge, within the 20 centimetres, the 0.2 millimetre recharge zone. So the city was re-licensed for the 20 centimetre recharge zone. So that was sustainable when we liaised with TWER. And yeah, we're fortunate that Kangaroo Paw Park, the park we upgraded, is within this recharge zone. And it's continually recharged. That's what makes it sustainable. So yeah, again, we received a 300,000 kilolitre license. That's for the 0.2, all the public open space within the 0.2 recharge area. And we also hydrozoned or eco-zoned the Kangaroo Paw Park, meaning that we concentrating this water just on the active space for the community. So a really usable active space, and we retained the native vegetation surrounding the park. So a fantastic upgrade for the community for greenfields, and yeah, it's certainly worth a visit. I'll just emphasise that we have looked at the future of this recharge in our north, and it is extensive now. So 7.6 kilometres north-south, 3.6 kilometres east-west, and then it continues to grow to 2035. This is based on 3.3%. So as people move into our catchment, as more water is treated at the Gordon Road treatment plant, we estimated that it would be a 3.3% growth per year, and that by 2050 means that our catchment is being significantly recharged via the Gordon Road recharge. So, but yeah, about 8.4 kilometres you can see in 2050. So that's the 0.1 zone. We also created a scenario where we turn rainfall completely off, and it still was sustainable within our catchment to continue to take water for public open space. So I'll move on, running short of time. So Love Our Lakes workshops. We currently monitor 20 urban lakes within our catchment. So our community live near these urban lakes, and five of the lakes within the 20 become hyper-eutrophic throughout the year. So chock-a-block full of nutrients. So we really want to communicate and educate the community why these lakes are becoming hyper-eutrophic and resulting in algal blooms that are unpleasant and can be odor causing. So yeah, we run the urban lakes. We're concentrated on these 5 sites that become hyper-eutrophic, and we emphasize that the nutrients is either coming from fertilizer, legacy nutrients that you can see in the slide. So a lot of Mandurah was farmland before it was urbanized. So there is legacy nutrients within our catchment, and we're not fully we don't fully have reticulated sewerage either. So our urban lakes can be impacted from the septic tanks. So we need to advocate for additional reticulated sewerage within our catchment to really help these important assets. They've become naturalised, so that they are created by humans for each estate, but yeah, they're now really become naturalised, and the bird life is teeming. They're beautiful spaces, and the other important part of these urban lakes is for drainage. So they are the low points within the catchment. We do have high groundwater levels in Mandurah as well. So these are important assets for our drainage, which we communicate to the community, and just really how the community can reduce their fertilizer impact. Circle come on down during the day and educate just how nutrients impacts these waterways, which is fantastic, from Natasha from Circle, and West Australian Seabird Rescue are also there. So with these algal blooms, unfortunately, impact our bird life, and we have had decline in bird life because of the toxic algal blooms. So that's really where we focus, to educate the community how these hyper-eutrophic systems impact wildlife. And we've been really lucky to work with Department of Water and Environment Regulation on a clay trial recently. That's a separate presentation, but the hydrotelsite clay trials have been really successful on one of our lakes down in Cox Bay in Falcon, and the clay really has impacted this algal bloom and made the system free from phosphates, which is a really fantastic outcome. So yeah, I'll just have a slide on our monitoring for total nitrogen and total phosphorus. We monitor our urban lakes quarterly, so each season, and we really want to get within the ANZAC guidelines for total nitrogen and total phosphorus for these systems to function. And we have the traffic light system on these urban lakes where, yeah, green, amber, and red. This lake in the northern part of Mandurah is a moderate risk. So we do get within guidelines, which is fantastic and what we want to achieve. So I did mention the hydrotelsite clay trials, again, a different presentation, but been very effective on controlling phosphates. And lastly, I'll move to the Waterwise Verge program the city run each year, and it's been fantastic. We've been running it since 2017, and yeah, registrations just keep increasing, which is fantastic from our community. We emphasise that if you convert your verge, converting it from grass to native vegetation, you can save 40,000 litres or 40 kilolitres per annum, which is cumulative throughout Mandurah's significant water savings. So yeah, registrations continue to increase. It was very similar to 23-24. This is us running a workshop with Chris Lampard from Mandurah Native Gardens, fantastic presenter. Each participant receives about 40 seedlings to take home to convert their verge. Here's an example of, we've got many examples, but I'll just show you an example of So a turfed verge that's was dying anyway, which is on purpose. And then in 2020, it started to convert after the grass was removed. This is about 40 to 50 seedlings in the ground with the mulch for this conversion. And then it's in 2021 starting to grow up, looking much better than turf. 2022 really taking off. And then 23, a little bit over the top. In fact, non-compliant verge, so you can't get off the road there. So in 2024, cleaned up, and again, yeah, looking much better than the thirsty turf verge. So I'll end there and pass over to Dave Janiec. Yeah, look forward to your questions. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you very much, Dale. Just going to see if I can bring this up now. There we go. All right. Thank you. All right. I'm going to cover 3 topics today. We're going to talk about utility metering, the groundwater licensing, and the reserve monitoring and consumption. I'll just start by explaining what we've implemented. We've put our own wireless network around the city. It's using all of our buildings to, in high points, we can put our own antennas up, and that allows us to put our own wireless network across the whole place. Because Mandurah is a long and skinny kind of LGA, it's a bit of a challenge for us to cover so much land. It's also quite hilly, which is a bit hard for radio networks, but we're doing pretty well in terms of our coverage. We've also installed our own sensors. They're not just off-the-shelf sensors. They are a commercial product, but we've picked it because it's customizable. We can put our own changes into the software and make it work the way we want it to, which is much more flexible than off-the-shelf products. And we've also created our own dashboards and our own reporting for our needs, and machine learning analytics and leak detection algorithms with email alerting to action, and put the what would you call it, all of the alerts into actual practice, and get all of our stakeholders involved. We also improve the data that we collect by combining with other data sources like the Bureau of Meteorology and our own people counting, and other things like water per patron sort of calculations as well. Why did we build our own solution? Well, we wanted to capitalize on the assets that we've got and the fact that we have so much of a distribution of our own technology around the city. Typically, people that use 4G and cellular kind of technology need to cover large areas larger than their own LGA, but because we have complete control of our own area, we can capitalize on the fact that we can run our own network. Also, the devices only use 1/5 of the power compared to cellular devices, and they don't have to stay attached to a network, so they can go to sleep for a very long time, weeks, months if they need to, and then wake up and send a message straight away. Some of our other IoT Internet of Things deployments have had problems with SIM cards being stolen, and then people run up big bills. Having no SIM cards means less administration. We can set the device up and away we go, and we don't have to worry about the theft of the SIM card. Because there's less power being consumed, we can report more frequently. SIM card devices normally will store and batch a whole bunch of messages and then send them as one big bulk message. But because we can send so frequently, we can get much more reactive kind of alerts. We also pay a lot less for the devices. We buy them in bulk. We customize them the way we want, so they cost a lot less. It's also really important with things like vandalism and damage to the sensors. If they're destroyed or if they're lost, it's not such a big deal. They're so inexpensive, it's not really that much of a risk. And as I said before, we want to capitalize on our own IT skills, our own IT team. I have a background in IT, but we also have a lot of buildings and infrastructure that we can leverage, and other skilled people in our teams. So what have we deployed so far? This is our largest deployment of sensors and wireless technology across the city. It spans as far as our wireless network will go. We've got 21 scheme water meter nodes. In fact, while Dale's been away, we've deployed another, I think, 7. Our plumber has come on board, and he's been keeping him in his van. And as he's going out to some of these places, he takes the opportunity and checks my little work list and says, "Oh, while I'm here, I'll plug one in," and away we go. The 48 groundwater meters, because it was our first deployment, I ended up doing a lot of them myself, but then I get told, you've got other things to do, you better share the workload. So I've been writing documentation and sharing how to do that. Now, our previous plumber and our current plumber have been doing those installations as well. Natural gas submetering, that's primarily for tenants on billing and some of our facilities. We've got 2 scientific or commercial grade tipping buckets installed on a couple of our buildings. It's primarily used for drainage assessments, so it helps inform on engineering designs. But because they report on 1-minute intervals, we get some fantastic insights into flooding and high rainfall events as well. We have soil moisture probes and soil pH probes, which I'll explain a bit later. And we have 2 combination weather stations, which are actually a part of our irrigation system, but we take all of the data in as well. And also before this project, we installed people counting to 38 of our ablution toilet facilities around the city. And we enrich the water consumption data using the people counting data from that as well. We'll also cover some of the 6 facilities that are using people counting, including the aquatic centre, which is part of our pilot. And then we've got 40 more to go. So it's a continuous sort of evolution of deployment. We've got lots of other projects in the pipeline for other city assets as well. So running your own network and deploying your own sensors, as you've never done this sort of thing before, we have our own challenges that we have to overcome. Signal strength is one of them. The problem with some of the sensors is they have to sit underground. So sending a radio signal from underground can be a bit challenging. Also, where we put our antennas high up on top of buildings, there are low-lying areas which can be a bit patchy. We have different antennas that we use. We can sometimes install the sensors in creative ways. So while the meter's underground, we can have an antenna that sticks up as long as we keep it from being pinched, stolen, damaged, or affected by the elements. As their water meters are in vulnerable locations, some of them are above ground, little protection or concealment. So we've had to come up with some ways to protect them, putting our own valve boxes in and so on. And also finding free time to do it. Even our staff plumber, he has a lot of other things to do. So asking him to install water meters, while it's great because it also helps him being more responsive, he loves the fact that if there's a leak or anything like that, he can jump out into the field and catch it in the act. That's been a great stakeholder engagement process as well. So diving into it a little bit more, we'll talk about utility consumption. At our aquatic centre, there was already a solution in place. It wasn't working very well. The reporting was failing. There was missing data. It was costing a lot to run. We didn't know if there was a signal problem. We didn't know if they were low on battery or why these sensors weren't responding. We had enough of it. And I said, look, I've already got some experience with these sensors from other projects. I said, how about you give me the money that you're going to put to the annual fee to keep using their product, and I will replace every sensor in the aquatic centre, every meters data logger in the aquatic centre. And we did. In fact, we found a few more. So on the left there, you can see some of the meters where when the building was renovated, they installed the accessory on the meter, but there was nothing connected to it. It's just a bundled up wire. There's nothing connected to it. So we found those and we connected those as well. So we installed more sensors than we originally had, and we still had money left over, and there are no ongoing costs because these devices have no licensing. They are ours. They run on our network. We handle all the messaging and the transport and the software that the data sends to. That's all covered already in existing licensing. So it's great to be able to set this up and kind of walk away and know that there's no ongoing spend there. On the right is one of our completed installations there. We use a Dragino brand little customizable sensor. These are under $100, and there's not really much to them. Little circuit board, and behind that there's a battery that lasts 6 to 10 years. And because there's so many inputs on them, we can make them do lots of different things. But it's pretty rudimentary that we're just counting pulses that come off a water meter, but you can do a lot more with them as well. Here's some of our installations. On the left there, you'll see a water meter that has a grey post installed next to it. That's a piece of patio tube with a cap and the antenna. Because it's out in the open and it's very hard to dig soil, it was decided to hide it in plain sight. Unusually, the whole brass water meter was stolen, but surprisingly, they didn't see the post and didn't see our data logger in the post, so they left that behind. But yes, someone stole the actual brass water meter. We noticed because we had no pulse reporting, so that was actually the bowling club noticed that they had no water too first, but we noticed that we had no pulses, so that was one of those things. That was complicated because when we replace the data logger and when we connect the data logger up and put a new meter in, it resets to 0, so there's some math. So there's a bit of complicated sort of charting that needs to be done to overcome that. Some of the others are in plain sight again, so we've put our own little irrigation valve boxes in to hide them underground. And then finally, the one on the right, we installed it. It was working great. That was at our Calypso Abolition. Sadly, when we went to install it, we found that there was already a leak, and the sensor detected that leak when we installed it. Second to that, we had to remove it recently because the Water Corp have selected Mandurah as a pilot for water metering, for their smart water metering, so we had to take that away. We've eagerly asked them to provide us the data that they will collect, because obviously we want to be able to use that data for our own purposes as well as leak detection, such as calculating the water consumption per patron. So it's really important, but hey, there's nothing wrong with that. We don't really care where we get the data from, whether it be our own sensors or from somewhere else. Ultimately, we just need to be able to get a better idea of our consumption. So as I said before, it's an off-the-shelf product, but it's special because we can do whatever we want to it. So the software is open source, which means the company provide the code where we can make changes to it all by ourselves. Not only does the code need to be changed, each of the water meter brands have a different cable. So we've bought lots of different cables from plumbing supply companies. They wire up differently, they connect differently. So we've had to adapt the devices to work with those. Also, the devices are a bit dumb when you buy them with the standard software, so they just transmit hourly whether there's any water flowing or not. So we changed the code so they only transmit once a day if there's no flow at all, but they'll also transmit once every hour if there is flow, so it saves battery even longer. We also had to make some adjustments, like I was saying before, when the meter got stolen. So there has to be a bit of chronological math there to sort that out. We also make our own security changes to the devices to hide the security keys. And we also put a tamper loop cable on there. Got the idea from one of the existing installations to do that. But that means if there was any disturbances or the cable was cut, we'd know about that as well. So what has this actually achieved other than playing with some cool toys? We've found 3 pretty serious leaks. As I said before, one of them we caught in the act when we went to the site. We found that it was already leaking. Regretfully, when checking the water bill had gone up over the previous months, and it got pretty significant by the time we'd found it, which is a bit disappointing, but this is all about being more proactive in detecting these. We've also put some processes in place with our finance team to check on the bills and see if the cost changes significantly as well. The picture there is a burst pipe at the Calypso Abolition that was found using acoustic equipment because it was really in an unusual spot. We've also found burst pipes, and we're actually we've got plumbers looking for a leak right now at our works building. We're losing 800 litres per hour. It's a very big building, and it's got a big 50 mil service, so our sensors detected that as well. Also, because we can report hourly rather than a lot of these sensors that report daily, we pick up things like when the systems at the toilet blocks jam and they foul up and it causes water leak for an hour or two. Our plumber will get those alerts and he'll go down there and see it and catch it in the act and actually detect exactly which fixture is causing the fault. So it's a lot easier to treat a problem when you can find it. And also, as I mentioned before, because we've got full facility data, we can combine that with our water consumption data. So in fact, one of the ablutions, when it was leaking, we could check before attending to site to see if there was a higher visitation or whether it was a leak as well. So enough talking about what we're achieving. This is a little video demonstration I put together, which explains, which demonstrates the charts that we have in our software, the Splunk software that we use. People can access this anywhere on their laptops. They can pinch and zoom and browse around and see each sub-meter and zoom in even further by day for the whole year. So at the bottom, you can see each of the sub-meters for our aquatic centre. Then you can change from the 1 year view down to, say, the last week, and you can look hour by hour. You can also see there at some points where after hours, after business hours, where there's still water flow. So we have detections which, or queries which detect if there's water flow after business hours. So that's a quick way to find if something unusual is going on. Below that, on the purple, we have the plant equipment, the plant SCADA equipment water flow. We keep that separate. Then we stack all of the sub-meters together and overlay the visitation for the whole facility. So that way we can get a really good idea of how visitation interacts with all of the sub-meters. Further to that, because we do all our people counting in separate zones and we can do all these calculations, this one here is for the kiloliters and the visitors, and then a quick little division here to show the water per patron across the whole facility. So it kind of just gives you an idea of the trends and you can see how they interact with each other. And then finally, because we have those sub-zones and we have people counting through the aquatic centre in separate zones, we can divide it down right down to the specific areas as well. This part here shows the average line and the water meter consumption per day as well. So you can get a real good idea of the trends. And then from the top, this is the water consumption for the zone based on the selected period, and then the actual water meter read and the serial number. So we can check to make sure that the collected data is valid as well. On the next chart, this is a more broader self-service chart. This allows pretty much anybody to select any time period, any time span, any of the sites that we're metering from as well. So here we're showing the bowling club facility, which had a leak. We've also got the dollar value, so you can see how much water is being consumed and the associated dollar value. We're getting that from the unit cost from the bill, so we can give all sorts of stakeholders a material kind of explanation of the impact when we have a water leak. We've got notes on every specific site and a chart showing the meters trajectory of the consumption, a map to show where the meter is as well, the signal strength for the data logger in the field and the battery, so we've got a better idea of how our sensors are performing and also how many messages it's sending each day as well. So we can take that away and we can pick on two of our different ablutions which have had water leaks, turn off the dollar cost assessment, change it to just 1 day, and now we can see the kind of leaks we've had. So the purple shows the Calypso ablution, which had a long-standing leak, and you can see it started leaking from the moment we installed the sensor, versus the more pink color, which was the Mary Street ablution, which had a fixture which was jammed and losing water. Then after that, you can see the water consumption on a typical day. Then here we go. This is the hour by hour consumption, where you can see the loss of water over each hour, and then you can see the little pink spikes there for when the system was jammed. So it's very responsive, and we are able to see the second time that it jammed as well. And then that was decided eventually, hey, it's about time we replace this system. So it's great to have the plumber being able to see this data as well and make educated decisions on when it's time to actually replace a fixture. So to stop this from continuing to happen. How do we pick up on these leaks? So the query looks a little bit complex and convoluted there at the bottom, but it's pretty straightforward, really. Each hour, an automation of a script happens in the background. It looks back 30 days and draws an average of a 6-hour and a 3-hour period, and it picks up all of the high usage spikes, and it alerts us when the water consumption exceeds by a margin. The thing is that some of these sites have very sporadic water use, such as our basketball courts, which are only used for events. That might only happen every couple of weeks, so they might only open their cafe once every couple of weeks. So the last thing you want is for it to look back 30 days, see no water usage, and then a big spike when they start serving customers. So we can also set fixed tolerances as well, so that way we don't have any false alarms. So that's enough of the utility metering. This is groundwater license allocation as well now. Here's some photos from a couple of years ago of me installing the sensors on the water meters around the city. Here's a map showing the installations. As you can see, there's quite a lot of these sensors just deployed around the city. We've still got a lot more to go. We've had a lot of challenges with these. The water meter, or the bore head works, are all in varying conditions. Some of them are pulse capable. So just like before, I explained where there's an accessory on the water meter, or the water meter has cables hanging off it. That's pretty straightforward. Get a sensor, we crimp the connector onto the bottom, and away you go. Some of them just don't have any cables, or they're an unknown brand or model, and there's no way to connect to them. There's a new product on the market which has an AI sensor camera, so you can fit the camera directly above the meter, and it will take a photo of the meter numbers, and it can send the number back. We're looking forward to getting our hands on one of those and trialing those. I think those are going to have their own challenges as well, because in the environment, if they're not in a protected kind of environment, I can imagine the lens getting dirty, but eager to see how well that works. Some of the groundwater meters are already integrated into some of the irrigation control systems. So instead of putting our own sensors in there, I've written some scripts which log into their irrigation control platform, and it scrapes all of the data out, and then we transmit that data into the same system. So it all gets unified in one place. People don't even know the difference, whether it's coming from one of our sensors or from an irrigation system. It also gives us access to more data, such as tank capacity, pump run times, and all sorts of other operational insights, so we can detect on other problems with our assets. And also some of the groundwater meters, as best as you do, you set them all up, plug them in, and away you go. And a week later, you go and spot check the meter, and the number's way off. And that's usually attributed to something being wrong with the meter. So the meter's working correctly, it's showing the numbers correctly, but inside there's a magnet and it's noisy, or it's rusted or something like that. So some of them, they're just not working as well as we'd like, and we're going to have to revisit those as well. So they're not always perfect, and the things aren't always working exactly as the way you'd expect. So this is a demonstration of a global dashboard. This shows all of the connected groundwater meters. I'll explain it a little bit better in the next part, but it shows each monthly allocation, with the blue for the water consumed, the green for the allocation remaining, and then the red shows the breach of the allocation for the month. Because each month's allocation is different, we have to do a lot of math to account for that. When we click on Joseph Cooper Reserve, we get a drill down map, and it shows, once again, some notes. It shows where the meter is, shows the allocation remaining, and how much water is being consumed in the period. This chart here is for our irrigation team, so they get a better idea of their use, and it also helps them understand how they're going towards their target and how they can intervene and change their scheduling to meet their irrigation target for each month. I picked on Joseph Cooper because it's over target. Here, you can also see on the right the orange line that shows the meter reading, and the brown shows their actual usage for each day, and then the pink shows a rolling 7-day average. Then the final third topic, this is about the groundwater and irrigation insights, once again to help our irrigation team understand how the water and rainfall interact with the soil and the public open spaces. So we had a pilot installed last year of soil moisture, pH, temperature, electrical conductivity. They're probes which go into the ground, same sort of brand and product, but they've got a probe that sticks out of the bottom, and we put that underground and they report hourly. We also combine that with the hourly irrigation data. We also have some weather stations for atmospheric conditions and rainfall. So that's our tipping buckets I mentioned before. And effectively, it creates a feedback loop. So we know about the soil conditions, we know all of the rain that comes down and the irrigation and how they all interact together. So finally, I'll show you one more chart. This chart's a bit busy, but the whole idea is it shows all of the data and you can turn on and off whatever you like to see. And I'll talk you through it here. So this is a pilot period from last year showing all of the sensors with the soil moisture and the irrigation and the rainfall. And you can see all of the lines there with the three different moisture sensors. So when we pinch and zoom in, you can see each line for each of the moisture sensors that are distributed across the foreshore. And in purple bars, you can see when the irrigations run, and then you can see the uptick in the moisture. And then you can see as it drains away, and then the next irrigation event spikes up again, and then it drains away. So you can see that quite well and see it. Each line is slightly different from different soil compositions and different calibrations. And then here's another pinch and zoom of a different area where it's rained. So the orange bars are rainfall, which resets each day at 9 a.m. And you can see how the soil moisture interacts from the rainfall. So then we can turn on a few extra parameters here. And as you can see, this is data that's being rendered dynamically on the fly. It's not all pre-rendered. It's actually calculating from millions of rows of data that we've collected over the period. And here we go, pinch and zoom again, and you can see with the extra parameters, you've got soil conductivity there with the rainfall event. And you can see how they raise and fall away as well. So there's a huge amount of potential with all of these different insights. It's just a pilot at the moment, but it gives us a fantastic way to communicate with our irrigation teams and show them all in one place how the water and how they can change their behaviours to save water and still maintain our public open spaces with fantastic moisture control and use of our water resources as well. And there's one final bit where we've isolated one and just got the rainfall and the soil moisture as well. See it draining away. I think that concludes everything. I think I'll wrap up there. Thank you very much. I guess I'll hand over to Bonnie now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Can you see my presentations?
Not yet. I'll just make sure I'm not presenting. I'll just close that. No, not yet.
Okay. So, Shelley, if I hit stop sharing here, it's coming up with a thing saying that it's going to cancel it for all the presenters. Should I do that and start again, or is that going to? Yep.
Go for that. That sounds good.
Okay.
There we go. All right, beautiful. That looked great, Bonnie. Thank you
There
so
we
much.
go.
All right, you're off.
All right, thanks. So I'm going to be chatting today about the process that we've undertaken over the last, over 2023, 12 months over the 2023 period to develop our new environment strategy. So as a first point of call, why an environment strategy? Mandurah is the city that highly values its environment. A lot of people live in Mandurah because they holidayed here as kids and they ended up making their way down here in retirement or later on in life to enjoy this environment. So as a result, it's always been reflected as a high value for our community, and it's reflected even now in our strategic community plan as one of our key focus areas. And then zooming out a little from that more broadly, why an environment strategy? You would all probably know that we're part of the Southwest Australia Global Biodiversity Hotspot, roughly the size of the UK. And to give you a bit of context, there's about 1,500 plants that are endemic in the UK, whereas in Western Australia, there's over 8,000 plants found in the hotspot, and 4,000 of those roughly are endemic, so only found here in WA. And we like to think here in Mandurah that even amongst all of this uniqueness, that we are also this little unique ecosystem in itself. So that little strip down there. And the reason being that we have an overlapping of a lot of different environments here in Mandurah. So we have lots of coastlines to manage. We've got the estuary, we've got multiple rivers, some pretty significant bushland, and obviously things like the Lake Clifton thrombolites. So it creates a very interesting management challenge for us here in Mandurah. So in terms of the engagement process for the strategy, because the community are so heavily invested in our environment and value it so highly, we were really clear from the beginning that we wanted to make sure that the people who were most invested in this document and in this area had a really strong chance to shape it. So we undertook 33 different engagement activities over the course of 12 months. So it was a very busy year. The majority of those were probably done in the first 6 months. And that started out with reviews of previous consultation and into staff and elected member engagement. We did a little pop-up with the general community through our arts festival, which is a pretty significant event each year, just to sort of start testing what people most value. Then we moved into more targeted staff engagement. And then we ended up testing those findings with our environmental groups and volunteers specifically. So the way that this process was built was essentially every step kept building on itself. So rather than having to recreate or redo the same thing over and over again, we wanted it to be something that all throughout the process, people were sort of building and testing and making it better and to ultimately get us to a really good outcome, which hopefully everyone thinks it's a good outcome. We do. Then we took it through all of our standard kind of processes, like our Access and Inclusion Advisory Group, Youth Advisory Group. We did some pretty significant consultation with our Winjan Aboriginal Corporation, our local Aboriginal community. And then finally, we took it back through our environmental volunteers and staff just to sort of make sure that we hadn't lost anything along the way. And then out to broad scale community consultation. And the end result of all of that was this. So this is a word cloud, and essentially the way it works is the larger the word, the more it was said. So this is a bit of a smoothed out version of our raw data, but as you can see, these are the key themes that came out of our community consultation, and community was at the centre of everything. And the reason for that was that regardless of the conversation, didn't matter if it was about people needing to be educated or that it needs to be community action that changes something, it always in some way, shape or form kind of linked back to what people could be doing to better our environment. So you can obviously see some pretty key and obvious themes coming through there, such as waterways and water and wildlife and all of the usual suspects. But what we also did was we asked our community what they valued and what their ideal environment was. And this is what we got. So you can see that it was something that they were really clear they wanted it to reflect our identity, but they also wanted to make sure that it was protected. Wildlife is a really big one. It's a challenging area for local government because we don't necessarily have the ability to manage wildlife in the same way that the state government does. So there's always a bit of a challenge there. But for the rest of it, you can see, you know, they're wanting a really healthy, diverse and beautiful and clean environment for everyone. And then our job was essentially to try and take all of this and put it into a nice, neat little framework, which in this particular case just did not work. So what we started with was actually this. Hopefully this one works for everyone. So as you can see there, we did fit all of those ideals into one thing. It just wasn't one nice, neat little sentence. So we call that our environmental narrative. And that was really the starting point for us in terms of shaping the strategy. And then ultimately this foundation of the strategy, which is our environment strategy framework. So from that narrative, we took out some of the key points and we created this strategic goal, which is a healthy and diverse natural environment where we walk softly on our Mandurah Gorda. And the idea behind that is that it's something that is a little more conducive to the way that local government planning works. It's a bit more measurable than a nice narrative, although the narrative's great for engaging people in the work because that's actually what people understand. It's actually their language. But the healthy and diverse natural environment portion of the goal, we can measure that. Where we walk softly on our Mandurah Gorda, we can measure that in terms of our own environmental footprint and also in how we're engaging with our traditional owners and reflecting them in our environment. So the framework is sort of underpinned by some core themes. So they're running through the middle of the framework, and these are built in nature, not on nature. That's all about how we maximize nature's place in our environment, particularly our urban environment. Woven by waterways, which is pretty self-explanatory. That's all about how we're managing our coasts and even our blue spaces, which we sort of, by blue spaces, we mean those areas that are adjacent to lakes and parks and things. They're a bit of a transition area, and also our estuary. Then lead and serve in equal measures. This is where a lot of our water-based actions sit. So you'll see sitting under there, we've got water security and also corporate energy and water efficiency as our priorities under that one. So that one's all about the city's direct impact and any statutory requirements such as waste management and things like that. And then lastly, we have stewards of the environment, custodians of culture. And this is all about how our community can get engaged in helping us to deliver this plan, but also in caring for our environment. And then above those themes, you'll see we've got 3 environmental constants. Now, these are things that we couldn't pigeonhole into any one area, and they were things that needed to be considered across all of the environmental work we do and really more broadly all of the work we do as a city. So the first being climate change, and in this case, it's really mainly about climate change adaptation because mitigation sits under that lead and serve in equal measures. Engagement and education. This is all about how we're communicating with and working with our community, how we're advocating for our environment. And then lastly, corporate responsibility. This is all about how we're ensuring that we're evidence-based, we're continuously improving, and that we're really integrated when we're planning and designing our programs. And that integrated planning was something that came up over and over again through all of the staff and community workshops. You know, we talk a lot about getting out of silos, and that's still very much a key theme in all of our conversations. And then underpinning all of the themes and the environmental constants, we developed these guiding principles. And these were sort of mini little environmental narratives, but more specifically for each of those areas. And the idea behind this was that, you know, if everybody in the environmental sections won lotto and retired on the spot, somebody would be able to come in and they would understand exactly what we mean and how we're intending to deliver this work. So they're really meant to be a bit of a modus operandi for how we think and act and operate in these spaces. And again, much like the environmental narrative, when we're presenting this back to community, this is actually what our community understand. You know, you can show them this nice framework, you can show them this really fancy 100-page document, and they sort of sit there going, yeah, but it's really simple. Why do you have to do all of this? Just go on and get on with it. But when you tell them this, they really understand what you're trying to achieve, which is really great. And then another key, it's actually really simple, this one. It's a really simple little table, but when we sort of presented it in this way, it became a really core part of how we present all of our strategies moving forward. And the reason for this is from left to right, you can see exactly what our priorities are under each area. You can see the guiding principles, so you can see how we're trying to achieve those priorities. You can see our objectives, which is exactly what we're trying to move the needle on. And then ultimately you can see the community outcome. And that community outcome links back directly to our strategic community plan. They're actually the environment outcomes in our strategic community plan. So you can start to see that everything's nicely stacked on top of each other and linked through. And then for those of you who are specifically interested in seeing a little bit more about the detail for the water side of things, you can see objectives 3.2 and 3.3 there in particular speak to water efficiency and water security. And as another note, these objectives are actually, in a lot of ways, these were designed by the community through the workshops that we did. So we tried to keep their words as much as we possibly could. And where we changed it, it was really where we were only adding things that they perhaps hadn't thought about yet, or where we knew that there were things that the city was specifically working on that needed to be included in here. And then the final element of the strategy is our 10-year implementation plan. So this sits alongside the strategy, and it's been kept at a very high level because, as you can probably tell from all of the priorities in this strategy, if we did a 10-year very detailed implementation plan, that would probably be another 200 pages, and it would definitely get lost in translation. So this has been kept at a really high level, and the intention behind this is that we are referring to plans that we need to continue to develop to get more of that detail. And I guess a good example of how that's working at the moment is under this lead and serve in equal measures, and the stewards of the environment, custodians of our culture, sits our waste education plan as a high level plan. But then that plan has actually got detailed actions for the next 5 years. So ultimately over time, all of our actions will be planned out and costed and endorsed by council, so that we've got a really clear path forward in terms of our priorities for implementation. So I'll leave it there because I'm conscious of time. But if anybody is interested in accessing the environment strategy, you can scan that QR code or search for it on our website.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. The most, inspiring. And I think that was Dan Ferguson's comment. It's absolutely inspirational, the way that you guys have led with the community and engaged everybody in your community and all of your people, employees across the city. And I love the fact that it's focusing on that integrated delivery. This is the thing that shows how important narrative is, which is something that we struggle with, definitely trying to get that collective understanding of where we're trying to go. And if we all have that, then we all go in the same direction. So incredible work, all of you at the city. I was getting so excited with each successive presentation. So it's like, wow, this is just phenomenal. So I know that we are out of time, and I apologise to everybody, but we do just have one question in the Q&A, and it's for Dave, and it's from Annie from the Department of Education. And she is interested in the groundwater smart meters. Did you have to do much extra programming compared to the software provided by the supplier? How much is the approximate cost for the groundwater meters? Sounds like a possible solution for school groundwater reporting. Connecting to public school IT networks can be a challenge, but it sounds like this brand has tackled any other challenges. Are you happy to have a quick response to that, Dave?
Yeah, sure. Okay. It wasn't too bad. The thing is the city has a lot of gifted assets, and the water meters for groundwater are different. So they're different brands for a start, but also some of them send a pulse for every 100 litres, and some send a pulse for every kilolitre. So that might mean a big bore might be, like for covering a big reserve, it might be pulsing multiple times a second, or it might be a small place and pulsing only once a kilolitre, and you might only get a pulse every, say, a minute. So we have to be careful about how frequently the pulses are counted, and if any of them are missed, then you're under-reporting. So changing the software required some consideration of that, and also because of the way meters work, and there's like a magnet and a switch inside, they have like noise. So when it goes from an up state to a down state, they have noise, because computers and microcontrollers are very fast. They'll pick up the millisecond bounces. So you have to write what's called debounce code, which basically smooths it out so it ignores all of the little ripples. And that took a lot of work. But in the end, it was very simple coding. So I'm not a very good coder. I just spent a lot of time on it and eventually got there, but had to concede that sometimes the meters are actually the fault, or at least I'll blame them on that. It's just, like I said, they're gifted assets. They're in varying condition, and they're from varying brands and models. So it is highly variable. The cost of the device, they're very cheap. They're about $100 each. So our finance team love that for things like insurance and risk assessments of leaving things out in the field. And also, like I said before, if they get damaged, it's not the end of the world. People aren't going to ask us, don't put another one back out because of its cost. So yeah, it's very, very inexpensive, and that's been our philosophy. We spend all of our money up on the antennas and where it's safe, out of the way, and we keep the spend on the field where it's most vulnerable to the minimum. For a public school, yeah, you could put one of the antennas on the building, and that antenna would cover 1,000 devices, because they only check in every few hours. So they scale really well. And in fact, Mandurah doesn't have its own network, but in Perth, there is actually a public LoRaWAN network. So you wouldn't even need to put your own implementation in if you're in a metro city.
Wow,
okay, covers
thank
it.
you, Dave. That's an amazing. And I think you've given us all the idea that current practice can be so much better. The things that you were talking about were really like a completely different language to me, but I'm sure that there's other people who are just as excited by it. And the way that you are visualizing the data has got to be the most incredible tool for all of your operators. And I'm sure that, again, it's like, Bonnie's narrative, your visualization of the data helps your guys then and girls work out what they want to do with irrigation. So I recognise we're over time, definitely. So I do just want to sign off, and everybody please thank these amazing people, leaders, champions, water champions at the City of Mandurah. It's been fantastic. And again, thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. So thanks guys so much. That was brilliant.